Next talk will be given by Thomas Schildknecht from University of Berlin, Switzerland. He will talk about European Expert Center for Space Safety providing service and support for space surveillance and traffic management.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm going to give you a short briefing in a nutshell what this is all about, this Expert Center for Space Safety. I would like to acknowledge my co-authors first from my team, but also from the team of Tim Florer at ESA. So this is, if I'm able to advance this one. Okay, this is actually a Swiss contribution to the Space Safety Program, which formerly was the Space Situation Awareness Program of ESA. It's an optional program, and this is, as I said, a Swiss contribution. So the center is actually hosted at the Astronomical Institute of the University of Bern, so my home institution. The idea is that the center is providing a whole series of services, operational ones, but also subject matter expertise, test services, and so on, for, in particular, 3 different types of observations: passive optical, SLR, or active optical, and active microwave, in particular radar. We have a whole series of customers or stakeholders, whatever you like to call them, to which we want to address. ESA, of course, sensor owner operators, SST, STM owners, service providers, and so on and so forth. So it's important to mention that it's an expert center. So it's a center where we have, first of all, experts for the different activities and techniques. And then we provide services. One of them is on the right-hand side. We validate and qualify sensors. We do data acquisition campaigns for customers with a wide variety of sensors. We are currently setting up an attitude information service. We are in a test or in a development phase for conjunction assessment observation support service, and the same for a re-entry observation support service. Last but not least, very important for us, we are an academic institution. We have research and development activities within that center as well. Okay, you can break this down to little pieces. I don't want to go to the details. You will have the presentation or the paper afterwards. Apart from the services, as I mentioned, we have stakeholders, observation types, and we have a network of sensors. So stakeholders, yes, the anchor customer is the ESA Space Debris Office right now, and the S2P program. We have commercial partners like, just to name one, ClearSpace, which is doing that ADRIAS active debris removal activity. We have research and academic institutions, national expert centers, many sensor operators, international and governmental agencies, and last but not least, we are also working together with standardization bodies. As I mentioned, we do have a network, or a loose network, let's say, of sensors. This includes passive optical, active optical, and radar stations. We have service level agreements with these sensors, which means we are purchasing, let's say, data from them on unit price level. We have a licensing model for the data and KPIs, which is very important. But before a sensor can become, part of the network where we have an SLA, it needs to be validated and qualified. And we do that for different type of sensors: tracking sensors, survey sensors, and sensors which do characterization. characterization could be, for example, light curves for attitude estimation, or even it could be radar imaging, whatever you can think of in terms of characterization. I would like to give you a few examples now of these services and some of the research and development activities we are doing. So this is just, you know, a small subset of assets where we have, let's say, service level agreements with them. You see there is mostly passive optical, but there's also active ones. And when I say active, we are concentrating mostly on space debris laser ranging. So it's not in any way, you know, a competition with what the ILRS is doing here. It's not about the geodetic laser ranging primarily, but we are also able to give some support for that activity. And I haven't shown a picture here of radar, but we also have radars in the network. So this is the main idea is that, you know, a customer would have a single interface. So a single interface to come up with requests and the same to get the products delivered. We're talking about high-level user requests. So usually user is not coming to us and tells us, I need one normal point of that guy or 10 normal points. It's more like, hey, can you provide us an improved orbit for this target, for example? Or can you do a specific survey in a region, geo, for example? Can you do a neighborhood watch? Or I need an attitude estimate for Vespa, typical, you know, request which could come from an active debris removal provider. Or I need astrometry, photometry for particular objects. And then we go on and analyze the situation, toss the right sensors in the network, and provide that product then to the customer. So validation qualification, very important in our whole chain. So this is about, you know, certifying a sensor or making sure that it can reliably provide data respecting some defined quality criteria. So we have two steps here. Validation. You know, validation is more or less make sure that we can communicate with the sensor, make sure that he's able to provide data in a certain format. And then the second step is really the qualification. I don't want to go into details. We require a certain amount of data over a certain time frame, and then we have KPIs to judge if a sensor is complying, you know, with our requirements. Usually we use calibration objects, for example. Typically for a laser ranging station, we would use ILRS fiducial objects like Legios to do some of the calibrations. Just as an example, a validation example here. Here we use Legios for space debris laser ranging, a new space debris laser ranging system, Legios, to make sure that they do things correctly. You know, we look at the residuals, as we all do in our community, and, you know, return rates, things like that. Then the actual qualification is on a space debris target. This is an example of a rocket upper stage. You see the residuals here, the raw data, after we have been determining in time bias and the range bias. And then, as I said, we have indices, KPIs, which we apply then, including things like, you know, efficiency. Was the sensor able to track what we asked him to track? Time bias from single passes, range biases, and there's going to be a talk about this in the next, here. You know, the number of normal points, SNR per normal point, timeliness, you know, do we get the data in time, the day, the next day, or just the months after? We also monitor some KPIs over a long time frame. This is an example of the monthly range bias and time bias for our own station in this particular case, but just as an example, what we mean with, quality monitoring for certain sensors. Attitude information service. Here we maintain a database of attitude information, kind of a catalog. To maintain that catalog, we need, of course, to have regular observations. We do the scheduling of these observations, the data acquisition with our network of partner sensors, and finally the processing of, for example, the basic information, which could be a light curve, could be some SLR measurements, it could also be radar, RCS measurements as an example, and then we do an automated classification, very simple for the moment being, like it's stabilized, slow rotator and fast rotator. But we can also, for particular objects, we can estimate the rotation rates and the full attitude state. So this is an example of, I call it a boring object, which is not showing a lot of signature. So it's stabilized, or it's a ball, it could be Lagios, for example. This is something, something is happening, but it's not, a regular rotator, at least not with a period which we can see within one pass. These are all LEO objects, and this is a nice, rotator, as we call it, where you could come up with a, rotation period, just as an example. Subject matter expert support. This is one example which has been shown by Andrea. We are also able to provide some expert support, which is not part of the regular services. In this particular case, we were asked to validate the ISANIA 1 laser ranging measurements, 2 in this particular case, GNSS satellites, so mostly Galileo, some GLONASS. I don't want to go into the details, but we use here, of course, our in-house expertise from CODE, AMJEX, satellite orbits. CODE stands for the Center of Orbit Determination in Europe. Research and development. On the left-hand side here, you see an example of debris measurements, and we are about to install our debris laser, high-power laser system. We do debris laser measurements right now, non-cooperative debris laser measurements with our geodetic laser. So it's really a challenge to find the few returns in the sea of background noise events. And this is part of the research we are doing right now to find better algorithms to discriminate these. The other one is an example here. On top you have a laser ranging measurement of NVSAT. On the bottom, the light curve, simultaneous. We are working on fusing this data in the best way in order to determine the attitude state. And yeah, with that, take-home messages. There is an expert center out there, which provides a multitude of services. But again, I want to stress that, which is built around a set of experts in an academic institution, which can provide subject matter expertise. Some of the services, we are calling them standard services. Importantly, we validate and qualify sensors. This could be interesting for our community here. If you happen to install a new space debris laser and want to know, what is the quality of your measurements. Once again, this is not something which is in competition with what we do in the ILRS. We are not going to set up a new service, for ILRS qualification. No, This is something totally different. It's about mostly non-cooperative tracking, and it's about providing independent, an independent opinion, or more than that, an independent analysis from what you do anyway, with your geodetic systems. So with that, thank you for your time.
Anything from the room?
So this expert center that you are planning, how do others leverage the services? I mean, what is the framework? Is that framework already established in terms of leveraging these services from you?
Thank you. Very good question. The center is there, and we are providing services right now, operational services for our anchor customer. We have currently an activity, pretty large activity, about commercialization, looking on how we can commercialize some of these services or spin them off to commercial actors. We are, actually on the way to look at what could be commercialized. Because finally, it's obvious, the academic institutions I'm in, that's not the institution which is going to provide the commercial services by the end of the day. But there will always be an expert center closely collaborating with commercial partners. I don't know if this is answering your question.
No, are you envisioning any licensing agreements? So, I mean, what exactly?
Licensing agreements. Oh, that's the point there is, if we ask a sensor operator to provide us light curves, for example, or light curve data. So there might be different licensing schemes. So we might have a license that we may have the full intellectual property, or some of the intellectual property rights, the IPRs, remain with the data provider. This is also a question of cost and the question of what our customer would like to have. That's what I mean with licensing schemes.
Also, there's a question from online. Do you see a perspective for fusion of attribution information service with ESA debris database discourse?
Absolutely. It's not our decision. This is going to be ESA's decision, but it's for sure that this attitude information could be used within ESA and used in whatever type of aggregated database. For the time being, it will be a database run by the expert center, and we'll have to see how this database can be accessed from the outside. But that's not a question. It's above my my function here to answer that question.
Okay, I think we are running out of time. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you.